On 9/23 of this year, at approximately 4:30 in the afternoon, the Baltimore County Police Narcotics Unit Pharmaceutical Diversion Team received a call from an area pharmacist on Reisterstown Road. The pharmacist believed that he was in possession of a forged false prescription, and the suspect that was trying to obtain the prescription was inside the store. That unit summons the Baltimore County Police Patrol Division, and a call was dispatched to the location on Reisterstown Road, the 4700 block of Main Street. At that time, a police officer arrived at that location at approximately 4:55, where he immediately encountered the suspect on the parking lot of the pharmacy. The officer called out for the subject to stop and come over to talk to him, at which time the suspect began to quicken his pace and fled toward a coffee shop on the parking lot of the pharmacy. Then he began to run, changing directions, crossing Main Street, and going on the opposite side of the road. The suspect fled down the end part of the 4700 block of Main Street and was confronted again by the officer in an alleyway that was boxed in by fences and a building. The suspect had nowhere to go except to go back through the officer. At this time, and what you'll see in the footage in the moments ahead, captures the actions of the suspect in this particular case. Detectives have discovered a CCTV from a private business. The CCTV will display to you the officer's actions, the imminent threat the officer faced of danger or death. We'll also advise you that this footage does not contain any audio. Witnesses to this incident have advised us that the officer pleaded with the individual, saying, "You don't want to do this, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do this." The suspect, on the other hand, according to the witnesses and others, repeatedly used profanities, screamed and yelled at the officer, "I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you." My police officer had 1 second to make a life or death decision. Please note that the film that you're about to see, in the interest of transparency, is the critical moments just prior to and after the shooting. It is unredacted, and the footage is shown in the time that it occurred. There's been no alteration in the speed of this film. These officers have to make a decision in a microsecond in some cases. With that, I'm going to ask one of the detectives to display the film, and I'll take questions after that. What you just viewed is a police officer encountering an individual with his hand in the small of his back, aggressively moving on the officer. You saw the officer retreat approximately 12 to 15 feet, pleading with this individual, "You don't want to do this, you don't want to do this." What you saw was the suspect abruptly bring his arm around from his back, the small of his back, and point his arm directly out, pointing his hand at the officer. Any reasonable police officer or citizen encountered this situation would feel that they're facing imminent harm and or death. This footage stresses the importance of capturing images on film. Again, as you know, Baltimore County Administration and the Baltimore County Police Department has recently announced its program to use body cameras in the Baltimore County Police Department and on our officers. We believe that transparency in cases like this, where we actually have footage, will help citizens understand the incident and the dangers police officers face each and every day. I'll take any questions you may have at this point in time.
Can you run that again?
Yes. You will note that the suspect, while still on the ground, is trying to dig in his dip or his waistline what the officer perceived as a weapon. The officer even goes so far as to try to, with his non-gun hand, restrain the individual's hand from drawing out from his trousers what the officer felt was a weapon.
The officer fired 3 times. He was hit 3 times.
We believe that 3 rounds were fired. The medical examiners determined that 3 rounds hit the suspect.
And were they all fired before he hit the ground?
Investigation is still underway to determine exactly when these shots were fired.
Was it where the suspect was hit?
We know from the medical examiner preliminarily that the individual was struck in the upper torso and leg.
There seems to be a lapse time of only 39 seconds. So you're saying that within that 39-second period, the officers approached, said 3 times, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do this. The suspect responded 3 times, and he was shot. All in 39 seconds?
This particular footage is 39 seconds of the CCTV that we thought was critical in the moments prior and the moments after. The point that I'm raising here is that while the suspect is advancing on the officer in an aggressive manner with his hand to the small of his back, he whips his right arm around, directly points his hand at the officer, brings his left hand up as to support the right in a ready gun position. That movement was less than 1 second. That officer had 1 second to make a determination as to what to do to save his own life.
Chief, where would you say the investigation stands on right now?
Ma'am, I'm sorry, I don't...
Where would you say the investigation stands right now then?
The investigation is still ongoing. I had an opportunity to speak to the state's attorney's office, and consistent with our policy and practice, we release images after the state's attorney has had an opportunity to review the film, and speak to me about the particular case.
I'm just curious, in the case of someone who may be physically or mentally impaired, would the same action have been taken, would it have taken place in the same amount of speed, or would there have been an opportunity to assess this person is having some difficulty, maybe we hold back?
Each situation must be assessed individually. There are times when an officer can clearly see there's mental distress. But in this particular case, it's clear. The evidence shows. You've seen it on video. Your viewers will watch it. That individual was advancing on my police officer with a gun drawn, with his hand behind his back, in his waistband. Officers know it's a common way to carry a weapon. Whipped that arm around in less than a microsecond. That officer had to make a decision. The decision that could save his life. And he did.
How concerned are you about the number of police shootings that your department has had this year?
I look at each and every shooting. We certainly investigate them thoroughly. The incident is reviewed by the state's attorney's office. It goes through an extensive internal affairs review, a shooting review team. We look at our training, our policies and practices. We don't just look at the shooting, we look at every shot that's fired. I believe the officers are using the force necessary to effect an arrest and preserve life and prevent injury.
Are you planning on releasing the identity of the officer?
We released it about an hour ago. I understand that this footage is being sent to your desk as we talk.
Chief, you may have answered this already. Any update on whether or not a weapon has been found on the scene, or are you pretty sure that no weapons can be found at this point.
In this case, we do not have an actual weapon found at the scene. But again, I want to remind you that the officer, based upon the actions of the suspect, you saw it clearly, any prudent, reasonable individual would have assumed that a weapon was about to be produced. He gave that individual, as you saw that officer retreat, but that individual had one way to get out of this situation. That was through that police officer. That officer has a duty to enforce the rule of law, and he did.
Chief, will you speak about your decision to make this video public, to release it today?
It's been my policy and practice in the agency to release information, certain information, and footage when we have it, images, when the state's attorneys had an opportunity to review the footage, and I've had an opportunity to speak to the state's attorney's office. Certainly, this is the new normal today. And with body-worn cameras coming to the Baltimore County Police Department, being used nationwide, this is a tool, again, body-worn cameras, that the County Executive, Kevin Kamenetz, and I have decided to use in this department. This is the new normal for public safety today.
Chief, the officer has been a police officer for about 10 years.
That's correct.
And this is his first shooting. Can you talk about his career as a police officer with Baltimore County?
He's been a police officer for the agency for over 9.5 years. He spent some time in the Woodlawn precinct, and now he's in the Franklin precinct. He has spent his entire time in patrol division, and he's one of my finest officers.
And he's on administrative?
Consistent with our practice, he is on administrative assignment, and certainly all the services will be made available to him as I do other officers who are involved in tragedies and trauma of this nature.
Chief, can you speak about your decision to move forward with body cameras just briefly? I know that at one point you set up a committee that met for an extended period of time, and it included the ACLU, NAACP, and others. Now that you've made the decision to move forward with body cameras, is that committee going to continue to meet and, at least during the initial period, review some of these actions?
This is an exhaustive process, and as you know, a 128-page report was released on the body cameras. I consider it one of the finer reports available today on the topic. That information was relayed to the county executive, and the county executive and I, after much thought and deliberation, decided that this was the tool for us. As you already know, the committee recommended that we not go with this tool today. But I thought, in the interest of public safety, Baltimore County has always been a leader in technology, policy, and procedure, that this was the right tool at the right time. We must embrace it in public safety like we need to embrace these private cameras that we find in our society today. And I think after you viewed this film and your viewers see it, they'll certainly understand with greater detail what our police are faced with each and every day. You have 1 second to make a decision whether or not your life can be taken or serious injuries about to come to you.
I guess my question was, will there continue to be outside citizen oversight of the implementation of the body cameras?
We're certainly interested in various stakeholders' opinion and input on body cameras. The heavy lifting is about to take place, and that's designing policy and procedure that certainly creates standard operating procedure that captures the images we want, but yet doesn't strip a professional, a human being, of their autonomy to do their work, just like you demand autonomy to do your work.
Chief, have you spoken with the victim's family? Has there been any communication between the police department and the victim's family?
We've been in contact with an attorney that the family has already selected. I have been in communication with the police officer in this particular case as well.
You mentioned you've been in touch with the family's attorney. Are you suggesting that the family has
Retained an attorney.
Well, perhaps filed a lawsuit against the department?
The family has reached out to an attorney.